Hello, my name is Denicia Buttes, Community Content Lead at Cardano Foundation, and welcome to Roundtable Talk number 12. Joining us today, we have some exceptional table members. Unfortunately, we're unable to join by the previous two of our previous table members, which is Matthias Benkort and Sebastien Guillemot, who are both attending the Builder Fest. But yes, today, as the follow-up of the previous roadmap tier list, we will be attempting to form a new roadmap list. Of course, all opinions are the table members' own, but joining me today is Arno, Fergie, Kevin, Giorgio, and Philip and Michele. I'll let you briefly introduce yourself, starting from Philip and ending with Michele. Please,
Yep.
Philip.
I'm the founder and CEO of Anastasia Labs. We're a blockchain R&D firm that focuses on Cardano, on open source infrastructure, developer tooling, and public good smart contracts and protocols.
Thank you. Arno?
I'm Arno. I'm a software architect and tech lead at the Cardano Foundation. And I've been working on various projects, various R&D projects in the Cardano ecosystem for the past 4 years.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name's Fergie Miller. I'm Director of Research Partnerships at Input Output. I work in the research department here on all things interfacing with the community. So looking forward to the discussion today, and thank you to the Cardano Foundation for organizing the session.
Thank you.
Hi, so I'm Kevin Hammond. I work at IOE, and I've been deeply involved in the rollout of all of the Cardano mechanisms from Shelley in 2020 all the way through to the latest deployment of SIP 1694. I also chair the technical steering committee, so I'm planning to bring you both perspectives to the table today.
Thank you.
My name is Giogio Zenetti. I'm the CTO of the foundation, and I'm known for creating the tier list, the original tier list. Jokes aside, I'm excited to be here today.
Thank you. Michele, you're muted.
Sorry, I wasn't ready. I'm Michele from Armoric Laboratories. We are involved in the development of various tooling and infrastructure, from smart contracts to transaction creation and whatever. And we are also, Armoric Laboratories also is a research and development firm involved in Cardano.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Before we jump right into it, I do want to thank all of our viewers who is joining us here today. I see here in the chat we have Mike already, and we have also Oysterpool. So thank you all for joining us on X and on YouTube, visible. If you're joining us today and you enjoy this content, please feel free to subscribe to our channel. Or if you're on X, feel free to reshare this roundtable talk, because the more eyes we get on this roundtable talk, also the more people can engage with the content, become more familiar with the items, and of course, the more familiar people get with governance or with proposals, the more likely they are as well to understand what they really are about and become more engaged within the whole governance ecosystem. So thank you for doing that. First question's up here. I'm gonna look to you, Philip, because after the first AMA session with the initial tier list, you're amongst one of the first basically to comment on that. So looking back at that tier list, what would you change from the tier list proposed by Giorgio, Matthias, and Sebastien then? Is Giorgio, can we bring the tier list up on screen so that everyone can see how the previous tier list looked like?
Yes, give me a sec.
Okay. So in the meantime, Philip can prepare his answer. So 1 second. Okay, there we are. Perfect. So posing the question again there to Philip. Philip, from the initial roadmap that was presented by Giorgio, Matthias, and Sebastian, what would you change from that list that was proposed?
Yep. So there are a few changes that I would make. One of the big ones, I think, is the importance of fair transaction processing. I think that this was evaluated very low, given how large of an issue this is on Cardano. So for those of you that don't know, right now, there's no fairness enforced on transaction processing. It's actually up to SPOs to be honest. It's up to the current block producer to be honest. And right now, this isn't a very widespread issue, because to be dishonest, you have to actually modify some code that you're executing, and not many people are capable of making these modifications. Like, they don't have the technical expertise. But when there's a financial incentive to do so, right, it will happen, and indeed it has happened on mainnet. And this means, especially given how Cardano works, for things like an order book or basically any application has some level of UTXO contention. And this UTXO contention is typically fighting different parties trying to perform some transaction that is valuable to them, which means if there is, say, some token for sale or some NFT for sale or something, and many people are trying to purchase that NFT in the same block, the person responsible for producing this block chooses who wins this UTXO contention battle, which means if they are one of the people contending, or if one of the friends or someone in their network is one of the people contending to make this purchase, they will move that transaction first, such that that party snipes the transaction, and everyone else's transactions fail. And what you see in Ethereum is that this type of power actually gets commoditized very quickly, and nodes will, sell. They'll advertise, "Hey, I'm the current block producer, and I'm selling a service where if you pay me, I will move your transactions before other people." Right? And the exact same thing can exist today on Cardano. It's a big security risk, and it also means that right now nodes can have something like tiered pricing that's implemented locally, right? So one of the cool, nice properties that we talk about in Cardano is that we don't have dynamic or tiered pricing. But because there's actually no ordering imposed on how transactions are processed, SPOs themselves can say, "Hey, I'm going to order transactions first that pay more in fees, or pay me more in fees." So you can wind up in the same situation where people are economically excluded from participation in the network, or fair participation in the network. So this I would move to B, and I would move revised. I'd move location-based services down in exchange for this. I do think location-based services are important, but I think the priority of a security risk on the ecosystem is higher.
Perfectly well formulated as well there, Philip. Is there anyone else who would like to share their opinion both on what Philip just said, or what item you would shift around? So I'm going to look at.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's a very interesting point you're making, Philip, and one that needs, it definitely needs some detailed investigation. One of the, so the node is fair in the sense that it's set up to deal with transactions in a first come, first served basis. But as you correctly point out, this is being done on a local basis, and it's possible then for a local operator perhaps to change the way that their node works without any global view of the transaction ordering. So I think that's really what you're getting at here, and it can be perturbed also by things like tiered pricing and by other mechanisms. Now, one of the reasons why we're working on a first come, first served basis is for efficiency of processing. So it's done for very good reasons. It's done for processing efficiency reasons. It's done for memory reasons. As we start to roll out new mechanisms, particularly LAOS, then the whole game is going to change completely, of course. One of the interesting things that we might see happening with LAOS is that different strands might have different priorities. So you might have a high priority strand, low priority strand, and these could perhaps be priced accordingly. So that might give some, that might help with some kinds of fairness, but it might also hinder some other types of fairness. So we need a concrete steer from the community. What exactly are the requirements? What exactly are the fairness requirements? Okay, so very happy to discuss that with you. I think it'd be a great topic for a full session. It'd be great to have your thoughts on that and to have an open debate on it. The thing based on our community feedback from December 24, the Ouroboros Paras was highly rated indeed because of the prospect of improving settlement times. But Ouroboros LAOS was the top rated item in the community priorities. So I would say you really do need Ouroboros LAOS if we're going to have increased throughput. Now, LAOS and Paras unfortunately conflict in some ways, because one is about reducing the time taken to settle transactions, that's Paras, and the other is about getting more transactions through the system. And when you increase the throughput, inevitably you delay some of the transactions. So hopefully the community is aware of that tension. We do have plans to help resolve it, but it's definitely going to play out. There's always going to be some tension between those two items. So I would move Ouroboros LAOS up. Alternative nodes came out as being something that quite a lot of the community was very keen, very interested in supporting. Mithril slightly lower in the priority list. So looking just at the community priorities from our survey, I would say you would put LAOS up and you move Mithril down. Not because I don't think it's important, but it's just not as important to the community, perhaps. Mithril needs a bit of focus, needs a bit of direction to determine exactly what it should do. So that will be a place where I will put a bit of effort.
Kevin, just about the Mithril part, because the thing is, it's still quite unknown. I mean, despite all of the efforts that was done by actors like Rick McCracken, for example, in 2024 to drive this, it still remains unknown. Can you briefly explain, just to the non-technical people joining us here live, what that Mithril enhancement really is? What is it for?
Yeah, well, so in a nutshell, what it does is it provides a decentralized signing mechanism for on-chain information. And the way it's being used mostly at the moment is to obtain signed versions of state snapshots that can be used by nodes to fast bootstrap themselves. So what you can do, so what happens is there's a snapshot of the ledger, some ledger information. This gets signed collectively by a number of stake pool operators, and we do need more people to join in that if Mithril is going to be useful. So currently it's signed by 22% of the stake, and we really want to get that figure much, much higher, please, because only that way do you get the guarantees that you need to make Mithril really effective. So the snapshot gets signed, and having been signed, you don't, in a decentralized way, you don't have to trust a single actor to provide you with snapshot. So that's a great thing to do. It's the exemplar use case at the moment. But Mithril can be used for all kinds of other things too.
is there any correlation between the Mithril enhancement and the alternative nodes? Because if it's let's say in particular useful to nodes, let's say bootstrapping nodes,
So
how does that what is the
clarification.
relationship between that and the alternative nodes?
It's not particularly tied to that use case. That's one use case, but it's generally a stake-weighted signature solution, which, from my perspective, there's many more pressing use cases for this than simply snapshots. For instance, how we're seeing it used in practice is on things like the IBC bridge, right? It's being used to verify state of Cardano in other chains, right? So for a different chain to know that a transaction occurred on Cardano, it needs to be able to verify state transitions of the Cardano ledger. And to do this without Mithril right now would involve like basically re-implementing the entire ledger as a smart contract in a different chain, which is infeasible, right? So the only way to do this right now is through implementing a smart contract that verifies light client, which right now our light client solution is indeed Mithril. And if you look at, so the IBC bridge relies on this. All the Bitcoin VMX stuff we're doing relies on this. Midgard relies on this heavily. So I do think, Mithril is extremely important. There are it's a critical dependency for a lot of the biggest innovations in our ecosystem. And I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done for it because it has been historically developed in a silo. And the result of this is that when consumers actually try to use this, you run into practical issues, like, for instance, the fact that you can't actually verify these Mithril snapshots in Plutus smart contracts. This is a huge barrier right now that, I think needs to be addressed relatively quickly.
Yeah, if I can maybe also try to cover the relationship between Mithril and alternative nodes, I would say it is a pretty important part of alternative nodes, especially because of Byron. Byron is the very first era of Cardano, and it is entirely different from what we have now. And so it is a lot of work that can be at least avoided at the beginning if we do have Mithril. So, and in particular, regarding strictly Mithril enhancements, what could turn useful also for maybe more personalized nodes would be more better support for only parts of Mithril certificates, such as ledger states. Maybe there are not nodes that are really interested in the entire history of the chain, but we are all interested in the ledger state. One such use case would be smart contracts, as an example. It's very likely that they are more interested in the ledger state than the entire history of the chain. So Mithril enhancements, in my point of view, would have to stay as an S tier because it can simplify the implementation of many other items that we see also in this tier list. And yes, then I have also some other things that I might want to move, but I'm not sure if we are going by any, I don't know.
Before you actually proceed, I haven't heard Kevin's take. So with respect, I will come back to you to you, Michele, but I don't think that Kevin was really finished his part yet. So Mithril, Kevin.
Yeah, so very, very happy with the description that people provided and the importance for the node implementation. I was going to say yes. There's a way to share information between other nodes. I think people have highlighted that, which is great. I was going to say that looking at the rest of the board, one item that got very little support from the community survey was partner chains. Now, I'm not sure whether that is because it wasn't regarded as an important topic. I think what the issue there is is that there are alternative ways, alternative mechanisms, and what's being labelled as partner chains is only one of the possible mechanisms. So with quite a few of these items, what we're really seeing is a difference between requirement and technology. And in quite a lot of cases, there is a single need or a single requirement can be captured using multiple technologies. So what we're seeing here is the kind of technology board rather than a requirement board. And what we would really like the product committee and others to focus on is what are the needs, what are the requirements? Because if we have clear, crisp user requirements, what we can then do is say, well, yes, we understand that requirement. And for example, is with Paras, we're trying to reduce the settlement time. We're also trying to balance security issues. We were at a technical workshop in Paris a few weeks ago, and there is a trade between how fast you can settle and how secure you can make the network. And what we're not clear about is exactly what the trade-off is, what's acceptable, what isn't acceptable. So if we were to say, for example, to end users, is 10 minutes good enough as a fast settlement time, which is roughly where we think things are coming out, maybe 15 when we add in Laos. The question is that good enough for the applications that people have in mind? Because if not, we need to either make some different trade-off or we need some other technology. Paras isn't going to make the cut, perhaps.
Yeah.
So we need more input, we need more information.
So Matthias says here, partner chains is important. One of the reasons World Mobile somewhat went to base instead of staying on Cardano. I can't validate that, but it's a comment that is stated here by Matthias. Okay, so Kevin.
Yeah, so I think to answer Matthias, yeah, I would agree that having partner chains connectivity is necessary. What was labeled as the work item partner chains was only one possible bridging solution. What we really need is to have an open and frank discussion with the community about what the needs are here, and then we can start to find the right technical solutions rather than picking on one technical solution rather than another. Let's figure out what is actually needed, what is required, and then we can evaluate different technologies and say, yes, this one meets those requirements. Maybe one technology doesn't meet all requirements, so you can't pick a winner or a loser. What you've got to do, as with Midgard and Hydra, for example, is say, well, both of these technologies are valuable, they're just valuable in different ways, and we need to see how the development goes and see how these what markets, what use cases they satisfy.
Exactly.
Right. I think a lot of that boils down to actually looking at the successful partner chains or parachains in Polkadot, because Polkadot is a sort of partner chain centric blockchain. And that's indeed probably one of the reasons we opted to use Substrate for our partner chains framework. So yeah, it's nice because we're starting these streams later, as our focus has been on decentralization, reliability, and governance, that when we're working on these streams, we can actually take lessons from other ecosystems and avoid problems that they've encountered because of how they've approached those solutions. The same thing is for Ethereum is like a very L2-centric roadmap. And because we know the problems that Ethereum's L2-centric roadmap is facing, we can avoid them from the ground building here.
That's a great point indeed. Before we move on, Kevin, is there anything from this list that you change, or do you say let's keep it as is?
So I'm looking at so I see log structure merge trees is low on the list, but we're seeing this as being essential to obtain scalability for the Cardano node. So from a practical perspective, I would say you would want that to be higher in the priority list. And I know that it may seem very technical, but what we're seeing with the preliminary results is that you can reduce memory usage to perhaps a few gigabytes. You can perhaps use this technology to execute the node dbsync and other tooling on very low memory architectures. I don't want to use the word Raspberry Pi in this session, but the numbers we're seeing suggest that a Raspberry Pi would be a suitable platform for a node, or even a smartphone, perhaps, which is quite exciting. So potentially this opens up the prospect to having light clients in the very short term. And anti-grinding, I think, is a bit misunderstood. We haven't really done enough research on this, but potentially what it does is to give a backstop for settlement times. So the problem with Peras is that it's possible to tip over from running in a good mode to running in a bad mode, where transactions take much longer to settle than otherwise. And what anti-grinding does is to put a limit on how long that settlement time can be in the worst case. So it allows you to put guarantees that you wouldn't, upfront guarantees that you don't otherwise get with Peras. So we think it's potentially a very valuable technology as an insurance mechanism.
Okay, clear. Okay, so what I'd like to do is move just down to you, Michele. And from Michele, I'd love to hear from you, Arnaud. From Arnaud, let's go with from there to Fergie Miller, and then let's end with you, Giorgio, if that's okay. Okay, so Michele, I know previously you expressed some, let's say, your opinion on what should be changed. Please proceed.
Yeah, so the first most pressing, in my opinion, that we should change is layers, mainly because as it is now, there are some important drawbacks in the design that I would not consider, for which I would not consider it to be an immediate imperative. In particular, I'm particularly worried about the inclusion of failing transactions in blocks, and those transactions that now we don't pay and we don't register and we don't store in the long-term history of the chain. With the current design of layers, would be stored in blocks. And of course, one other concern that is very popular in the community is the increased cost in resources to run node in layers, and in particular, increased cost without an actual benefit for like the node. So why would someone have more costly node for no incentives in running these more costly nodes? So yeah, for this reason, I think layers is definitely not an immediate imperative. Maybe top priority, but in my personal point of view, layers would be an important initiative. So B tier, it definitely is an important initiative. So I wouldn't definitely not put it lower than that. But in my opinion, layers would be either A or B tier.
Okay, A or B. All right.
Yes. Then one thing that I see is light client infrastructure that is pretty low. Again, also this one, I don't think it is like the most important, definitely not. But we are definitely not in the best spot for light client infrastructure, especially if we want to consider a node in the browser. As for now, like network protocols, network communication is focused on TCP communication, which we don't have in the browser. So we would need something to allow eventual node light clients that are running in the browser or to be able to communicate with the rest of the network. So I would move light client infrastructure maybe into at least D tier.
Can someone clarify, is this specifically like client infrastructure around Mithril, or is it like a separate work stream?
I would since it is separate, I would assume it is a different, like it is more everything except Mithril, because Mithril it covers a lot more than like clients, but I don't know honestly. So if someone wants to clarify.
Yeah, I can speak to that. It's a research stream. So it's not necessarily specific to Mithril, but for all applications within Cardano that support smart contracts and and obviously dApp development as well.
Okay. Michele, can we close this segment with you, or is there anything you'd like to add?
Maybe I can add a note on fair transaction processing. One thing that was mentioned is that like nodes might want to select transaction with higher fees to get them the fee. For how it works now, the fee goes in a pot. It does not go directly to the node that selects the transaction. Other than that, like regarding fair transaction processing, I think it is a good thing to research. B tier may be okay. C tier, if we end up moving it, is fine too. But I think we're there. And I would also like add a note to Peras. I see like this is more to clarify. Like Peras in the community is seen. Oh, okay, we'll have crazy fast finality and everything will be fast. It is not quite that way. Like finality, there is a difference between settlement and finality. In Cardano, we have pretty decent settlement. So you submit a transaction, 20 seconds, you can assume it is in a block. Whereas what we'll do is we'll give more guarantee about finality. As for now, finality on Cardano, finality means that like there is a difference between when the transaction goes in a block and when the transaction can never surely be removed. So it is final. And as it is for now, a transaction becomes final. So we are sure we'll be there forever, like 100% sure after around 36 hours. But we are pretty decently sure already after like something like 10 minutes. What Peras does not make the chain faster. It just gives us more guarantee about when we are sure on when it will never be removed. So
exactly. One moment there, because Matthias also made a comment on this. He says here IBC bridge use case. So that's Paris plus Mithril advancements.
Yeah.
Now I think both probably, let's say, has some sort of advantages when it comes to the use that particular use case that Matthias mentions here, right? If I'm correct.
Paras is definitely useful for bridges, most definitely, because you have like finality is pretty important for bridges and exchanges. So those are the projects that will benefit from Paras. Bridges, layer 2s, centralized exchanges, everything that needs to be absolutely sure that a transaction will stay there. So that, but it won't, like, just to clarify, it won't directly benefit the usage of the chain. It won't benefit like DeFi protocols, DEXs as an example, because DEXs already like assume settlement as a good enough. Whereas it will benefit all the rest that has partner chains, layer 2s, all that stuff will definitely benefit from Paras. One thing about, I was talking about fair transaction processing, and I see also congestion control. I think these two go together because congestion control is something that is kind of related to how transactions are included in a blocks. As for now, like the first in, first out approach does it so that as soon as like there are 3 limits in a block, the size, the memory of of contracts, and the CPU of contracts. So what I would say is like this this approach used now for selecting transaction makes it so as soon as you reach one of these 3 limits, the other are ignored. Whereas there could be space, as an example, say you reach the maximum CPU of smart contracts, so you cannot call more smart contracts, but you have still space in the block itself, and so you can include normal transactions without smart contracts there.
I see Fergie doesn't agree with me there.
Maybe I said something so
there's actually a lot of room for this, and I've talked to the people actually working on this, and like one of the even lower hanging fruit is the fact that like when you're adding transactions, you encounter a transaction that fills that's too large to fit, you immediately stop. Whereas after that transaction, there may be smaller transactions that you can fit. Right, so if there's a transaction that's 16 KB and the block only has 15 KB, and after that 16 KB transaction, there's 15 1 KB transactions. then if you, instead of just stopping and saying, okay, we're done, if you attempt to process the rest and include them if there's available space, then the block could have included 15 more transactions. I think there's a lot of room for optimization here.
Yeah, so
Thank you. Wait, hold on a second there, because Fergie, you clearly disagreed with what Michiel said. Can you elaborate, please? Like, why you nodded no?
I didn't disagree. I just had someone who was grabbing my attention. Apologies. I'll wait for Arno to speak, and then I'll speak afterwards.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if congestion control is about that specifically, or is more general. But I think we could move it to a B tier. Could turn useful. Other than that, I think more or less we should be good.
All right. Thank you, Michiel. I'd love to hear from Arno.
That's complicated. So so first of all, there are things in this roadmap that I would like to see, which are not there, and it's everything that comes from my personal experience working on Cardano, and I guess from what I gather from other people who has similar experience, like everything related to developer experience, the whole tooling, the whole development process, the whole testing infrastructure, everything is a pain. Building an application in Cardano right now is extremely difficult. It's extremely difficult, and it's so difficult that only people like who's like Philippe, Michele, the people working on the core team. I mean, a handful of people can really, really invest the time and energy and have the knowledge and the breadth and depth of the knowledge to really work on it. And we are like casually discussing like each of these items is like a full researcher team plus a full development team, and I'm really a bit annoyed to comment on all those items, because I know some of them because I've been involved into the development of more than a handful of them, but I'm really a bit sad that we are missing some of these key things, like in terms of how to make the life of developers easier on Cardano in general. I mean, and really, things around. I can imagine things around testing, for example. It's still hard to test a Plutus contract, for example, or Plinth contract. Sorry, and it's still hard to test smart contracts. It's still hard to test a sequence of transactions involving smart contracts. And when I mean testing thoroughly, like having a process, having a methodology, all these things which are somewhat related to state machine contract enhancement environment, maybe, but more generally related to all the developer experience.
Yeah, I think these are covered under auditing tools, which I agree
No, I wouldn't cover that. It's not only about auditing tools. It's really about the whole development process. Auditing is one thing, but development is a different thing.
Right. I think that this auditing tool item was misnamed, but I think it includes the PB testing framework, the unit testing framework for smart contracts, etc.
Yeah, and and my development experience I also include all kind of tooling, integration, integrated development environments, all the things. And I think that's really one of the things we are really bad at it. And the problem is that my take on this is that this is a problem for innovation and the product level. That's what I think, because if you can't easily try experiment with solution that build quickly something that won't last forever, but at least that you can experiment with, and you can have reasonable confidence that it will do something. That's really that stiffens innovation in a way. So I think the whole thing around that's what I would add first and foremost.
Okay.
And then sorry, you had a question.
No, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
And then regarding the rest, I think one of the comment I would like to add is that we put things in blocks in boxes, but the boundaries of the boxes are usually much are quite blurry. For example, when we talk about mithril enhancements, we talk about the ability to build decentralized to have a decentralized signature process and diffusion of signatures and key registration. Turns out that the technology for doing that is actually what's needed for PRAS signatures and for layer signatures. So this technology also contributes to it. So the boundaries are not so strictly. So I'm kind of realizing I'm not answering your question, Denisio.
No,
But
actually, it's more like, from this list here, what I think you actually answered the question for yourself. It's like what
yeah,
I'm missing. You said what I'm missing here is really like developer tooling or tools that makes the lives of developers more easy. That's what I understood basically, and that's
yeah,
perfectly
and it
fine.
seems like and it seemed like okay, and maybe it's just happened that this list is more I would say a roadmap which is tied to research and development, but developer tooling is part of research and development, and to me that should really be much higher in the priority, and that should be in this roadmap in my humble opinion.
Yeah, yeah,
Mithril is part of this developer experience, because if you don't need and alternate, by the way, alternate nodes are also part of this developer experience. And that's the reason why personally I like the fact that this is on the top priority, because it's also improving the developer experience and by developer I mean in general people building stuff. I'm kind of like being able to have much more nodes which are attuned to some specific process that you can manipulate, that you can tailor to your specific needs, and that can still interact with the rest of the network. That's what we are talking about when it comes to alternative nodes in general.
okay. So despite the fact that we're missing more developer tooling, the ones that are there right now
Yeah,
with
I
the list
think broadly
here.
speaking, yeah, and usually, I'm tempted to also to think that what's important is the top priority, and then the rest it just happens to yeah, that we can discuss and we can weigh we can adjust things in the middle, but the top priorities are the thing we should really focus on, because
Yeah.
if really these are top priorities, then they should be delivered, and they should be delivered now, and not in not in 10 years. So focusing on what matters most should be our top priority.
That's going to be a question actually that I will ask just in a bit, but I do want to make sure that everyone is heard first. But from your point of view, alternative nodes and Mithril being, let's say, really high up in the tier in the list, that's okay for you, because that's part of the more or less the developer tooling. At least it would fall.
But I have a vested interest in those three things, so of course.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, can I just quickly touch on the security thing, the testing stuff? I think this is a huge existential crisis for the ecosystem. Like a lot of Cardano's marketing is around robustness, security, formal verification, property-based testing, etc. And in practice, almost no dApps have any property-based testing at all. Many of them have like abysmal unit test coverage, and it is really a DevX problem. It's extremely expensive to build out this testing relative to where it should be for a robust and secure ecosystem. And as a result of this, right, I spend a lot of time auditing open source contracts, and I found critical vulnerabilities in like 30 or so mainnet protocols, like that are significant to the point where like they can result in complete loss of funds.
It's a different angle, and I mean, thank you for highlighting that, Phil. I think you're totally right. But to me, like this, because the developer experience is abysmal, we are definitely people are putting their money and other people's money at risk without even knowing, without even realizing that. Because of course, I mean the core infrastructure of Cardano is very robust. I mean, and thanks to the bright people that developed it for the past 7 years, and that's fantastic. But if that experience is kind of locked into something that is hard to grok, hostile, difficult to master, difficult to understand, that it's super hard to understand the consequences of things that, I mean, if you put a field there in your transaction and you don't realize that this field might lead to something ripping up into your fees or maybe your execution units or whatever, and then all of a sudden your stuff doesn't work, and that we are really not making this approachable leads to security risk, stiffen innovation, and ultimately just makes things like we are kind of like goldfish running in our own ponds, and that's great.
This is something critical that you just point out here, and I would love to hear from the others on the panel about this particular issue here, because yes, we can come up with a roadmap, we can say this needs priority, that needs priority, we can put up whole tier list, but the way, at least correct me if I understood you wrong, or no, the way the system is developed is what kind of like very complex. In a way, it's too complex for other people to really understand, like how to develop and to understand what consequences one choice has on another, or something like this. That's what I'm understanding from you. So
There is
a
a saying among developers, Denisha, we say like, if you're pushing yourself to your limits when developing, think about what happens when you have to debug and troubleshoot. You are beyond your abilities. And if you imagine that we probably in the core development team that built Cardano, I don't know, like 20 PhDs or something like that, like people, super bright people, and those people put themselves to nearly to the limits.
Okay, so
and it's also a matter of financial cost. Like if a DApp has $2 million to build their application, right, and it takes $1.9 million to actually do the development work and get it, feature ready, then you have very little left over for testing and security. And this is the issue that I see.
You're not the only one here who's developing, and I appreciate your insight there, because we also have Michele. Michele, do you run into these issues as well? Because I mean, I'm thinking the first thing that comes to mind is documentation. I mean, we do have good documentation, right? So if you run into troubleshooting, right, there's always the documentation that should help you or guide you through that process, right? So I'm looking at you right now, Michele.
Let's be serious. Let's be serious. 5 minutes.
Yes and no. Documentation is there, but it's very sparse, and the deeper you go, the deeper the documentation is embedded in the source code. So yes, there is documentation. You have to really look for it, and you have to fight for it. I definitely agree with Arnaud that the development experience can be improved. We suffer a bunch of technical debt also regarding toolings, like existing toolings, and the tooling. Like one of the trends that we saw lately is that improvements and hard forks are being pushed very, 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 very hard, and that causes we have faster updates to the network, but actually what happens is that the tooling has to catch up, and that usually also leads to the problem then of dApps breaking. One of the latest hard forks was, I wouldn't say catastrophic, but definitely caused problems. Because it was pushed very, very, very fast. Pre-prod was forked 1 week before mainnet. It was not optimal, and it caused problems. So, all of this goes together to say, I do agree with Arnaud. We should need more space for more space for toolings in development, and that includes not only the existing toolings such as transaction creation and filling the gaps, but it also includes testing, so that includes emulators that are up to date. That includes property-based testing that was mentioned,
that are easy to use.
Yeah, and so we need to, if you go look at also other ecosystems, the tooling for developing is much more evolved. Of course, if you look at it at Ethereum is there from longer, but that is what we are comparing with. So if you go look at Ethereum, they have something like, I don't know, Hardhat. You plug it in, you plug your whatever Solidity smart contract, and you have a full-fledged DevNet on your computer, and you can simulate it on how it works on the blockchain. So you have all this like really evolved testing tooling that we are effectively missing.
I will give you a very, just to end the discussion, because I could go on for hours, but a developer from my team, somebody who has like 25 years developer experience, with an experienced Haskell developer, somebody who has been working on the wallet for 3 years. This person is struggling to set up a DevNet.
Yeah, DevNet.
That's not acceptable, I think.
Yeah. The DevNet are a point.
Seems to me that's going to be like a really separate discussion, or discussion for another time.
Yeah, but
I do want to move on to Fergie, because Fergie also.
Yeah.
Well, just on that point. So I mean, obviously, I'm on the research side, which is not directly associated with this point. But do we, this is very apparent to me, a challenge that Cardano has, and I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying, Arno. What's the actionable items here? Because I suspect there might be a bit of a gap in terms of ownership. I mean, I sit in the
that's a problem.
I sit in the Intercept Product Committee meetings, not as a voting partner, but to provide guidance on all things, research items. And I suspect that it should be under their remit, but I know that they're not putting, the items that they're putting forward for the budget this year to research this. I don't think they're putting forward engineering solutions to address this. So I think you might have identified a gap within the community that no one's actually owning this at the moment.
I'm going to look at Kevin, because Kevin, you're also from the engineering side. So where Fergie, you just mentioned that from the engineering side, it's not something that's being looked at. I'm going to look at you, Kevin, to comment on that, because, would you like to comment on that?
Sorry, give me a bit of context, Dionisio. I was getting sidetracked by a discussion about documentation. Okay.
Arno, I'm going to look for you towards you to summarize that a bit.
I can jump in. Who's owning?
Go ahead.
Yeah, who's owning these product items and the developer experience within?
I think that
what have you.
So that's a good question, and it's something that doesn't come apparent, because product focuses on features. So this is the discussion we're just having about documentation. It's about other things. You're focusing on new features, providing those more than on the developer experience. And what I think we've got to realize is there are different communities involved in the ecosystem. They all have their own distinct needs and requirements. And very clearly what we do need to do is we need to focus on the builders, those who are picking up on the infrastructure. A lot of the discussion we've been having, I think, is based around this distinction between what is core, what is the engine, what is layer one, what is layer two. And the focus has been to some extent on dealing with, producing features very quickly, which has then led to some issues with documentation, of course. But B, the focus hasn't been on the people building on Cardano. That I think is a real shame. What we need to do is we need to get a work group, a focus group on how do you make things easier to build on Cardano.
Yeah.
So I think that's essentially what you were saying on it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And Jonah seems to also agree with you here, because also to what Arno said, like, we really need that. And also what Fergie said, we need an owner really to that. And it doesn't seem that there is like a clear owner when it comes to like the developer experience and the developer tooling. So Arno, that is spot on. Jonah seems to be extremely active in the chat, but go ahead, please.
Yeah, Dionisio, I was going to say so we have to be careful about how we approach this, because there's a bit of confusion when people say we've got to improve the developer experience. what's heard within IO is we have to improve the experience for people who are working on developing new nodes. And I don't think that's really the case from the side conversation we're having. That isn't the problem, but that's where the focus has come. So it's big effort. So what we need to do is we need to identify the problem, as I've been saying before, and the problem appears to be to do with layer 2 setting up appropriate tooling, providing documentation, providing learning experiences, or mentorship, all these things that are needed to build up the ecosystem as a whole.
Yeah.
Now the question is whether that is within the remit of the technical steering committee, and arguably it's not, because our remit should be focusing on core infrastructure.
Understood that. I think, Arno, would you like to respond to that before we move to Fergie?
I would say, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know exactly what's the remit of the steering committee. So yeah, okay, yeah, fair enough. But to me, if you build an infrastructure, and if you lay out tracks and then nobody takes a train, what's the point, right?
Yeah, I think in regards to owning, like one of the most important thing before going to owning is breaking it down. Like, tooling is pretty vast. You can, yeah. So you have to break it down. You have to break it down, like.
And I think that's, I mean, Michele, I think you are spot on in the fact that, I mean, we heard that in different ways. Like, there is no owner. There it's pretty vast. We don't know exactly what we're talking about. Yeah, of course, because we are talking about the experience of people who are actually building stuff. So it's not a feature, it's not a box that we can put in on this format, and that's hard to talk about, because it's a lot of different things. It's a general approach towards documentation, towards testing, towards security, even like making everyone conscious. Not only that security is just the business of the core node, security is the business of everyone. So educating people, I mean, not only educating, but giving them the tool. I mean, and I think this is, personally, I think this is really the job of the technical steering committee, because it's also a technical problem. It's a social technical problem, obviously, but it's also a technical problem, that providing people the tools to be able to do it, because given the complexity of the infrastructure, only the people who know exactly how this infrastructure, I mean, know well enough how it works, will be able to provide the tools for the others to be able to do something in a way that that works, that is consistent, that is safe, that is reasonable, that is performant, all this stuff. And that's also a joy to work with, so that you can build great product, and those great products will make our chain useful.
Right.
But basically, it's like, but by so I'll get to you there, to you there, Philip. So what you're saying basically here is that because we don't have those type of, let's say, toolings, it's kind of like prohibiting developers from developing on Cardano. And if we're doing that, basically not providing that type of useful,
it's not preventing them, but it's just like, it's much harder, and you have to be very, very dedicated, which means that in practice, if you are not already into Cardano, it's very hard to approach, right? It's really alien, so to speak. And I mean, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying, yeah, it's different, and it's different for good reasons, and we all know that. But it's different. So if we don't cope, or if we don't make for that difference for others to come to, to make this part of this ways that other people can really tackle that and understand and become familiar with the difference. That's, I mean, we are kind of, I mean, personally, I think this is really, to me, this is really it's an existential risk, because, yeah.
Philip, would you like to respond to that? Then I'd like to move further to.
Very quickly. Importantly, developers actually aren't touching anything on this roadmap. Like, if you're building an application on Cardano, you're building on things that are built on top of this roadmap. And whether we consider those things core or not, I think is important, because to some extent they really are core, because this is the tech stack that as a developer you're interfacing with. And if it's bad, you will not continue to develop on Cardano. So things like PluTS, things like Lucid Evolution, off-chain frameworks, on-chain tooling, etc. These are the things that developers are interfacing with in their day-to-day. And this is where I think the biggest burden on resources is right now, because we're very focused on core, strictly speaking, core infrastructure, which is the items in this roadmap. But there's much less focus and much less robustness and documentation around the tooling built on top of it, which means as a developer, when you're coming in, even if the Cardano ledger is extremely well documented and the specification has everything you need, you're not even interfacing with the Cardano ledger. You're interfacing with some off-chain framework that's built on top of it that might be even struggling to keep up with the changes introduced at the ledger.
Yeah, if I can close the circle, in terms of breaking down, and we started from we need to add tooling in the roadmap. Like, I would break it down. One item that I see missing there, and also Philip mentioned, is alternative languages for developing smart contracts, because effectively the only language that developers can use today is Icon. Effectively speaking, like practically speaking. If you want to use Plutarch, you need 1 to know Haskell and 2 to know UPLC, because it is pretty low level. So one item that would fit this tooling would be the support for diversity in languages. Then support for off-chain, like an off-chain standard. If you go look at, again, Ethereum, they pretty much rely on Web3 JS. So we need something like that. And so the off-chain transaction creation needs to be included in the roadmap. One other thing that needs to be included would be the infrastructure to get to how to communicate to a standard infrastructure. As an example, looking at Ethereum, they have JSON RPC. We may have gRPC, we may have UTXO RPC, we may have something entirely different, but we need to have something that is pretty easy to plug in if you want as an infrastructure. So maybe I would include in the roadmap this infrastructure, potentially even services, but already there we need to be careful on saying open source and all that other problems. But yeah, this could be a short list of toolings that are missing and could be added.
Mikhail, I'm going to move on to Fergie. There's also some comments here from Maxime Joseph Lokel. He says here the technical steering committee is developing a platform to build on top. If the interface is bad, no one will build. And then his follow-up comment is, it is a mandate for the technical steering committee to meet the need of the people building on top. I'm assuming he means building on top of Cardano. Okay, so Fergie, please, I'd love to hear your take on this. What would you like to restructure, et cetera?
Yeah, so I mean, I sit in the Intersect product committee, as I said. I know they're researching the product roadmap, but the point I was making earlier is they're not putting forward any engineering solutions to address it, this year. So there's a time lag and there's a gap there, which I think is suboptimal. It would be nice to have some tooling come through. So yeah, I mean, obviously I sit on the research side, and a lot of the discussion that we've had today has been about engineering. It's interesting having, I know we're both applying for the same budget, but it's interesting having engineering items right next door to research items. I think the reason why I say that is research has this sort of long arc nature to it, and it's not as transactional. It's a bit more complex to understand, and I guess what I mean by that is we're a number of these items here that we're discussing are research items, but they sit within a 5-year Cardano vision that we're putting forward. That vision covers 9 thematic focus areas and actually is broken down into 34 streams. And what input-output research proposal for 2025 is a recommendation for 20 of those research streams. So we're prioritizing 20, and that's our recommendation, but open to discussion. And what research does is we write a paper. So those of you who are familiar with the technology readiness level scale, or TRL, or sometimes called software readiness, SRL, it's a scale of 1 to 9 to market readiness. A paper takes a stream up to SRL 2. So we publish a paper with supporting technical artifacts. And we're committing to doing 20 of those this year. And then what we do is we hand over that stream to what we call a technology validation business unit that sits within our broader innovation department. And they will then pick, again, 6 streams. So they're picking from that portfolio. It's kind of a funnel approach. They will then pick 6 streams to be rapidly prototyped, formally verified, and over a 6 to 12 month period. So there are a number of those streams here as well. So this is all happening, and that will take it up to an SRL 5, as it were, whereas core tech and core development happens at a lot later TRL, sort of post TRL 5 through to 9. So they operate at different stages in your maturity journey. So I think that's an important point that I just wanted to get across. I'll sort of make 1 or 2 other points, and then.
Sorry, can I just stop you temporarily, Fergie? Because the reality is that as we're doing development, we often need things which are at a lower TRL, a lower SRL. So quite often, what happens is you're doing a bit of design or a bit of implementation. You discover there's a question that hasn't been answered. At that point, you need some research input to drive the discussion forwards. So I don't think you make the clean break that you're trying to do there. Also, where things are very applied, then what you're expecting is that they'll be picked up and deployed much faster. They need more technical input. So I think we need to agree the boundaries here. We're trying to establish good boundaries between the product committee and the technical steering committee. But I think the correct distinction is it something which is immediately needed for development, in which case it comes under the TSC? Is it something more forward-looking, in which case it comes under the product committee? And there'll be some items where we have to look at things jointly, because there's an element of both.
I couldn't agree more, actually, Kevin. I'm on your side here. So we don't operate in an island, and actually, I think Hydra, if I can talk about Hydra, is a sort of case in point. So we quite often hear from the community that Hydra has been done. Why do we need further research on it? Hydra Head is at a sort of implementation stage, at a product stage, but it has a lot of risk assumptions to it. It has quite a limited feature set in a way. I think the architecture is quite limited. It's not fully decentralized. So whilst Hydra Head is being matured and built out, actually what we're proposing is to do research streams that investigates the rest of the requirements for a leading layer 2. So when we talk about Hydra in research, we're actually talking about any layer 2 scaling solution. But for us, that also includes the Hydra tail. So you need to close out those layer 2 streams effectively. There's also sort of what we're proposing is an interhead. So that's looking at multiple channels. So that's scaling horizontally at layer 2. And then actually the auditing tools item that was mentioned earlier is actually a Hydra auditing tools work stream. So this is when you need to be able, for regulators, for perhaps enterprise customers, they need to be able to go and verify what's happening at layer 2 in a sort of thought through way. So whilst Hydra Head is being built out and maturing as an engineering solution, research is playing a supporting role to Hydra Head, but also maturing the rest of the layer 2 suite. So we work in an agile way, and certainly research supports streams when they go into technology validation, and also support streams when they go into engineering and product as well. So I want to make the point that you make is a valid one, and I think sort of the last point I'll sort of close out is sort of the role of research. So if you're when you're building complex systems like blockchain, if you're looking at purely demand-driven approaches, what you'll find is that it actually takes too long to get to market. These are complex builds; they take a number of years, and the market moves quite quickly. So the role of having a scientific vision is you're hedging your bets in a way, but you're taking an educated guess by experts and saying, these are the areas where we think the market is going to be next year, in 3 years, in 5 years. And this is the capability we want to build up to SRL2 in these core areas, so that innovators, entrepreneurs, developers in the ecosystem can come, and when they have an idea or see an opportunity, there's a base of research available to them. This also creates a sort of competitive moat and some form of defensibility. And that's the sort of the argument for having a scientific vision. Now, not all of those bets are going to come off. Actually, we've produced over 200 papers, around 230. 50 of those have been implemented into Cardano. So that's a 20-25% strike rate, which is really high. But if you look at the work that's done, and Ouroboros is a case in point, that's been a work stream or a project that's evolved over a number of years. Over 7 years, we had various versions of it, various features upgraded, like Laos, like Peras, sorry. And that's the kind of role that research plays, as we build these foundational strategic elements that have catalytic value within the broader community. And we provide the foundation for development, not necessarily to solve today's problems immediately, but to provide strategic value to the ecosystem and the community over the years going forward. So I mean, I'll pause there because there's lots of individual discussions I can have, but those are the points I really wanted to get across on the call today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So coming from a research background, absolutely I can see the value in what you're doing, what you're proposing. I do think we need to also focus on what the community needs and requirements are. So what we don't want to do is to do some exciting piece of research just because it's publishable and then implement it when something much simpler might meet the community needs, even if it's less publishable. So we do need to get the balance right there. Otherwise, we're not doing the best duty for Cardano and for the ecosystem.
Yeah, I fully agree. And what I would say is that input-output is good at the big foundational stuff. And actually, I also sit in the research working group at Intersect. I think there's lots of room for more tactile research, PhDs, and shorter-term projects that are more reactive and working more closely in product. So I don't think it's either or. I think it's getting the balance right between both. And one thing I would say, and obviously I would, is that we've been working over the last 6 months to socialize the Cardano vision and the research proposal. We've had extensive conversations with the product committee. We've been on various X spaces, admittedly not all of them. So it's and not all the partners that we should be or want to be. So that's part of the reason for being here today. But we're not looking to build on our own. We're looking to be reactive and play a supporting role to the community and build with the community, and working well with the demand side of the innovation process.
Perfect. Guys, just for the sake of time, I think it's really good, that we also hear from Giorgio. Giorgio, I mean, you've consumed all of this information, waited patiently. Let's head over to you. What is your take on this?
Yeah, thank you, Denisio. So I'm very happy with the discussion. So, and I'm happy the consensus around the tier list was more or less agreed that it was reasonable what we achieved last time. I think the point of our no stands, but in defense of the tier list, we picked only research, let's say, core item in my mind. So DevX, for me, was not part of this tier list. Nevertheless, I think it's a missing area of focus and maybe some that requires coordination. And maybe how we are framing the budget discussion could be reframed to include some more DevX. And also something that has been pointed out to me is also the commercialization and the adoption initiatives. historically, I think Catalyst has been used for building DevX stuff and more adoption type of initiatives. But maybe though this Catalyst stream lacks the coordination of somebody coming in with the big picture and saying, we really need alternative smart contract programming languages. We need a legit testing framework. So maybe we can take those pots that are not covered by the budget and kind of, I don't know if it's intersect or CF or input-output, we could work together to find those pots that are not covered by the current budget that requires this coordination that maybe Catalyst cannot provide, because with Catalyst you got 1,000 of proposal and it's difficult to come up with the something that covers all the needs. Maybe you get duplicate proposal and something that might be key for developers to develop things might slip out. So that's what I would say. And thank you so much for all the input. It was very helpful for me. And I do agree. Let's coordinate also this DevX part, and we really need adoption. I also think the commercial side of things must be pushed and have a coordinated approach to having Cardano being used more.
Thank you so much there, Giorgio. Is there, before we wrap this up, is there anything that any of you would like to mention just briefly before?
Yeah, very briefly, I just want to mention on this roadmap, there were a few items related to governance improvements. And while I think that, this is valuable, I think it's missing a huge aspect of governance, which is protocol level governance. And I think this is actually the most important component of governance for Cardano right now. In that at the ledger level, we have a robust governance system that, there's room for improvement, sure. But at the protocol level, the DApp protocol level, we have basically no on-chain governance. And this is a big problem because the value proposition of dApps are that as a token holder, you are a direct owner of the protocol, and you can, you can vote on how the protocol will adopt and change. You can vote on how the treasuries for these protocols are managed. But all of this voting happens off-chain. And at the end of the day, you're trusting these teams to obey the result of the vote or to even put things up for vote in the first place, which indeed a lot of the time, as we see, they aren't doing. And even the best intentioned team, right, when they suffer financial trouble or have bad times, tunes can change. And we see this with AXO, right, with the treasury just being completely liquidated without any consent or interface with the token holders. And something like this can only be prevented with a robust on-chain governance solution for dApps, where token holders actually vote on-chain for treasury spends and things like that from the DApp treasury, not from the Cardano treasury. So I'd really like to see this be considered core and become a public infrastructure or public service.
Philip, we at Research, obviously, we're proposing a stream that is titled Next Level Governance Protocols. It sits within one of our 9 thematic areas, which is Democracy 4.0. So we're proposing this. We have good understanding of what we're doing. Governance is very much MVP in how we see it within Research at the moment. So we agree with you. It's an important area to develop.
Yeah, so I also agree. I'm not trying to see it as something which needs specific layer 1 support, Philip. So the question is whether do you need something additional to do this, or is what we have already with Plutus, is it capable of providing that level of governance capability? And I think it probably is, but it'd be interesting to dive into that.
Right, it probably is, but it would take a large amount of funding to build something robust like that. And the issue with this is that because it takes such a large amount of funding, there's no financial incentive to do this except as a public service and good. We have to sort of work around this and probably make it a treasury thing. The other approach, obviously, is to bring the protocol level governance and somehow expand the protocol to have it so that this can be utilized by dApps. But yeah, this is a research problem.
Right. Yeah. I also wanted to respond partly to you, Philip, but also to Giorgio, which is that Insect is proposing to set up a tooling work stream under the open source committee. So we've discussed this between the product committee, the technical steering committee, the open source committee. Conclusion was that we're seeing a lot of things that should come under a tooling work stream. So that would be the obvious place to fit the thing you were proposing, and it could also be the obvious place to put some kind of governance improvement if what you're doing is to develop a new smart contract-based approach, Philip, for example. That would be
we should be doing a tooling tier list soon to see what we should prioritize and what not.
Absolutely.
That makes a lot of sense, because I think, Arnaud, you brought that up earlier about developer tooling, and that obviously sparked a very interesting conversation. It kind of shifted also the whole let's say the whole roundtable talk, but it was also necessary. And I think that's where we see like where a lot of the pain is at this current moment. I mean, yes, we do want to have developers, we do want to have less adoption, but in order to have adoption, you also need really market fit. I mean, you need solutions, good solutions that really answers to certain problems that people are willing to use. That generates problems. But if we're not attracting those developers with all of these amazing ideas, because developing on Cardano is difficult, then it just takes longer. So yes, it's that's kind of how I'm looking at it. But at the same time, you also have the research side. So yes, you need solutions that are immediate, that needs to be given focus and attention now. And on the other hand, we also have to respect the research side, because yes, that's the core stuff. That's how do you say it? It's native to Cardano. That's the foundation. So it's really about finding that sweet spot. What do we need now? What does the developer community need now? What are they missing? And on the other side, people like you, Fergie, and your team. So yes, it's really about finding that sweet spot. And this tier list that we just worked on here together with Giorgio, that is awesome. That's the starting point. But indeed, as George, as you said there, maybe it's good to have also another tier list specifically to developer tooling, because we cannot ignore that. That's essential part as well. That's something that people are crying for, asking for. But I do want to thank every one of you guys for joining us here today. This discussion was definitely meaningful. Yes, it's sad that Sebastien and Matthias couldn't join, but don't worry about that. You all were brilliant in your own capacity, and the input that you guys gave provided today, I truly do hope that it adds value to the overall discussion in helping the community understand what should be prioritized, and when the time comes, what they would support or not. So thank you once again, and I wish to see you all in another roundtable talk, be it about the developer tooling. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Bye.